Now, Nigeria has reportedly signed a $9 million contract with an American lobbying firm in the United States, aiming to influence international perceptions of the country's security challenges, particularly in the face of global criticism over religious violence and rising insecurity. The deal has stirred debate at home. Some say engaging experts abroad is a strategic move to manage narratives and attract support, while others argue that it's PR at a time when the security crisis demands boots, borders, and local reform, not public relations.
Now, joining us this morning to unpack the politics, the legality, and also the broader implications are Dr. Sam Amadi, Director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, and also Tohwo Oseruvwoja, a legal practitioner. Gentlemen, you are welcome to the discussion.
Good morning.
Good morning. Dr. Amadi, I'd like to start with you this morning. It's very interesting. We've seen the role that narration actually plays when it comes to framing whatever happens in a country. The latest instance would be Donald Trump and how he framed the Nigerian instance of violence, where he framed it as religious genocide. And we can see how much attention that has gotten globally. But now we see Nigeria attempting to do the same thing, employing the help of a foreign establishment to help, well, PR our image. And many are wondering, I mean, opposition have come out to say that this is wasteful, especially at a time when resources are scarce in Nigeria. The ADC, some civil society groups, they've all said that they don't like what's happening here. But the APC have defended it, saying that it is necessary, especially when it comes to what we're experiencing now in Nigeria with our relationship with the U.S. and the U.S. President Donald Trump. So, sir, at a time of scarce resources, is this wasteful? $9 million, two tranches, 4.5 each time for 6 months. Is this wasteful, do you think, Dr. Amadi?
Well, thank you for having me. I think I want to start first from waste. Waste is relative to value. So first, this is not the first time we heard about lobby. Lobbies, there's a street in Washington called K Street, where lobbyists have the office. So it became famous as the K Street. So lobby in Washington is a political reality, and countries and institutions do that, and that's why the FARA, the Foreign Agent Restriction Act, requires that those whose clients are foreign governments are also indicated. Now, if you look at comparatives, okay, so what do this Washington? Again, this is touted as the biggest in terms of money value lobby contract in Washington of an African country today. So this government has deposited the largest sum of professional fee for any lobby. At the count, about some of the guys are getting about $700,000 per week. Okay, now, so the first thing is, what is it about? Okay, fine. Trump has designated Nigeria, many countries are designated, and the government thinks maybe public diplomacy is important. And that's fine. I mean, from a value audit, I would say that we exaggerate what these guys do. So even if it's not, it's good faith, even if there's no money laundering involved, if there's no corruption involved, value for value, we could say maybe you didn't need to pay that much to the DIC group to help you do things that even your own internal politics generate the toxic, the misinformation, the narrative that you're trying to counter in Washington is generated home here by your own errors, or your own lack of enforcement of rules and lack of effectiveness in securing our citizens. So yeah, it can be what we call a cop-out. You don't do what you ought to do, you just cop out. But beyond that is the question around how you get this done. The reason why the US, the FARA, and even the congressional law requires that lobbyists indicate who are their clients, how much they are charging for public consumption, is because the right to know. So the first issue, and that's why I did the FOI request, is who is this Asta firm in Kaduna? I'm a lawyer of some senior pedigree. I don't know about that as an outstanding firm anywhere in, manned by one Yoruba name, I can't remember his name again, who is said to be the lead guy. How does this guy represent the NSA office, the ONSA? What's the transaction? Which banks originated a transfer of $4.5 million already paid for 6 months? Who got what approval? So there are issues beyond the whether it's too much money, whether it's even a value proposition to do this, even whether it makes sense the long or short term or medium term. The key issue around the transparency, the institutional ownership. And so in the US, so the first point of entry is, what is this? How did it get approved? What's the process? Who is this Asta law firm? How did they get into this? How did this money move out? A lot of money paid. Is the foreign affair involved? This is the institution that owns foreign policy. Is it even true that this law firm is acting on the instruction of Mr. Oseruvwoja? So these are questions about democracy, about responsive governance. Before we talk about the waste in terms of value for money, of course, I was a special advisor on foreign affairs under Yar'Adua. I know much about K Street lobbyists. In fact, the information I got from me from fellow K Street lobbyists, this is a ruse. These guys are going to do nothing. But that's a judgment for the government. I'm not the president. The president has a right to make a reasonable and useless proposition. That's why you're executive. So the voters punish you. But the other issue around transparency, accountability, process, system, procurement are issues that Nigerians have a right to know, because this could be a conduit, as many things in Nigeria, for money laundering at official scale.
Thank you, Dr. Sam. You kind of just made sense of everything in a nutshell. But Tohwo, from a legal standpoint, are there any concerns, and I believe there should be, around how this contract was awarded? Like Dr. Sam said, the transparency, why is it a private firm? What is going on? How did they pay? Who approved it? What are the due process? Or is it just an oversight by the National Assembly? Tohwo.
Okay. What Dr. Amadi has just pointed out, I think I want to build on that narrative and a view based on institutional defects. If you look at Section 5 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the president is vested with the power to manage the affairs of the country, and also build a relationship or international relationship, or build diplomacy with other countries. And that power is within the office of the president. But another area we need to look at, when it involves finance, that is where the National Assembly comes in. When it comes to expenditure of public fund, the National Assembly need to come in when every money is appropriated. So now the question that will be looked at is institutional values and institutional process. Like he stated earlier, there is no offense for lobbying internationally. And as a matter of fact, lobbying is part of international relations and is part of international bargaining tools when it comes to building concessions and when it comes to building a bilateral relationship. But if you look at it from the bigger perspective, you look at the bone of contention is the finance that involved and the institution through which that finances the institution through which that finances is released. But another thing, you look at the National Assembly. We have a National Assembly that in the history of our National Assembly since 1999, where our democracy is not interrupted till now, we have a National Assembly that is merely referred to as rubber stamp from the day ab initio, where members were singing, "Or your mandate we shall stand." So I'll be surprised if the National Assembly is even going to debate this. And I will be surprised if the National Assembly is even aware that such amount of money has been released from the federal coffers. Then you will now see on this issue, which institution ought to be the focal point or the front line in such problem. You see the Minister of Foreign Affairs. That is not done. It's this issue of the National Security Advisor. And if you look at it from history down to Jonathan's regime, the Office of the National Security Advisor have meddled into several affairs through which money laundering, through which public finances are not accounted for. And my belief and my concern is that this may still be another trigger point. So legally, it is not wrong for countries to involve in lobbying. But another thing again, we should also look at is that the subject matter, can it be done outside money being paid? The purpose in which they are engaged for are purposes where if we have diplomats, if we have ambassadors in place, those are narratives that will be pulled out. Another thing that we'll be looking at again, lobbying or the same time marketing or PRO branding can only be done or achieved based on content available. And we should be so careful, and I believe it's as a result of an oversight of our leaders to know that the country they want to lobby have even more data than what Nigeria is playing at. So it's really bad in that context. But legally, I've not seen anywhere in the Constitution or anywhere in the international law where people are not being paid for purpose of achieving one diplomatic relationship or the other. If you cannot build relationship, obviously finances will now become a bone of contention for bargaining, which is a bad thing in terms of our poor relationship as a country with other nations.
Yeah, so Tohwo, now you're talking about relationship, and it's not wrong per se to pay to build relationship. But don't you think at this time, the reason for the payment and what is happening in Nigeria in terms of you trying to change the narrative or the perception of, oh, there's no Christian killing and, you know, the insecurity that is in Nigeria, don't you think it would have been better to put that money into the insecurity in Nigeria before paying for PR, Tohwo?
Fix the problem first.
Yeah, let me say something clearly. You know, the issue of insecurity in Nigeria is politically influenced, and I'll tell you categorically from the base, from my view and information I've gathered. So the government knows what to do to stop insecurity in Nigeria. That is one. Then two, for making that payment, you see, is another thing. Just like I stated in my earlier, just as I stated earlier, as a fact that public relation is not built in abstract. It's not built in a prophecy, imagination. It's built on facts. So if Nigeria is paying that huge amount of money for the purpose of pushing a narrative that is already within the knowledge of United States government, that is even within the knowledge of other developed countries. And no, let's look at it from the narrative of what is happening, what happened in, let's say, 10 years ago. It takes about 2 or 3 working days for that thing to come out publicly. But with the advance of technology, with the advance of the internet, as it's happening live, it goes on live. And all these are means in which international organizations, foreign countries gather their data. So if they pay that money, just like I said, the Office of the National Security Advisor has been involved, or the people manning that office, in one way or the other, they've been called to question for public fund and all that. So making that payment means nothing. And I think, and let me give you the narrative that will come thereafter, is the fact that, oh, we entered this agreement in 17 December 2025, and there was a US strike in Sokoto in 2025. So we've achieved something. That is a total lie they want to say. Because just like Doctor has pointed out, some of these issue of lobbying, majority of them just create that package atmosphere. And some of them may not even tend to achieve what they propose. And the other area is the actors involved. And if you look at the people in Tinubu's government, you know that even this issue of the genocide they're talking about, they raised it even 5 years before this administration. And Tinubu himself also tweeted regarding this issue of genocide. So it's already a data that is within the US domain. It's just another way of wasting finances, wasting money. And even if they don't use it in this manner, which I believe, if they look at it carefully, they will still use it in another manner in siphoning the public fund.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Amadi, let's come to you. Now, I saw your letter, the letter that you wrote to the Office of the National Security Advisor. I'm hoping that we can pull that up on the screen here. At the very bottom of the first page there were requests that you made, and I wanted to know why exactly this was very important. One of them was due process. What process was followed in selecting this firm? And then what process, how the consultancy fee of $9 million dollars was determined and approved. Have you gotten a response to this letter, sir?
No, thank you. We've not got a response. We have 7 days under the FOI. And like I put in that letter, the FOI is comprehensive. First, it actually mandates all government institutions to upload critical information on their own. You know, people look at the Section 2 of FOI, which requires you can make a request like we have done. But before that, Section 1 mandates all public institutions, and the Office of the National Security Advisor is a public agency under the NSA Act. So they are mandated to upload. So like FRS, we've said this to FRS, and they wrote to us and say, keep calm, we're going to do it. The problem is that people forget that information is at the heart of democratic citizenship. I mean, if citizens don't know what their leaders are doing in their name, politics becomes even worse, or democratic politics becomes even worse than military government. Because essentially, the link between citizenship and governance after election is information, that those who are in charge of public office provide their citizens with information that enable them make a judgment as to whether what they're doing is right or wrong. So the request is focused on not just, okay, you have a discussion as president, Section 5, executive power, what to call in constitutional theory, sole organ, is the president who represents us in foreign policy. So we're not going to say you have no right to engage Washington, and like he pointed out, you could engage it through the agency of the ambassador, the minister, and several public diplomats. You know, the whole idea of Voice of Nigeria, Radio Nigeria, all the various outlets is that the government has a capacity to engage in public diplomacy. They have a coherent, consistent story to tell. But of course, if your actions are at variance with what you are proposing, then you have a dissonance and you have no effect. But even beyond that, the question is, how does the institutions of the state work? I mean, somebody can actually take out $9 million from Nigerian coffer under a ruse. The law firm Asta, that's a funny thing. Asta legal, probably an unknown. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but maybe we're going to go out to do due diligence with CSC to say where was it registered, but not of a profile that you say, oh, why, this guy is well known. I know some of the firms that are involved in public diplomacy or transnational legal work, not one of them. So we might be in a face sitting here and one guy from nowhere, you know, plugs into the national treasury and takes out $4.5 billion and will take out more in the name of maybe paying even fraud. And the reason why American government requires you to deposit and talk about their clients and what they are paid and what to do for them is for national security. So underwriting our request is that it's Nigeria's national security and democratic politics that there should be an official disclosure. In fact, the Office of NSA never has said they have such a contract. They have not even listed it anywhere. And so the question then is, what are even telling you to tell us secrets of, you know, national security? It's a simple procurement. Yes, we hired this firm. Yes, this firm did this. Yes, this money went to the central bank. So those information are critical. And if we don't get them, we'll go to court to ask the court to mandate them. Because again, we lose our democracy every day by failing to ask the questions that citizens ought to ask. You see, yes, we elect people, they can be good or bad people, they can be criminals or not criminals, it doesn't matter. Once you elect them, they have authority to govern. But then your responsibility as citizens is also to ask questions, to the right to know, because that's the bedrock of the right to choose and the right to make a comment and the right to freedom of expression, freedom of association, and all the freedoms is underwritten by the right to receive information. And that's what the FOI has done for us. But unfortunately, like Nigerians, we don't utilize the fullness of the authority that the law has conferred on us. So we have the freedom of information, which requires that all government agencies has 16 mandatory disclosures. The law says mandatory. That means I don't have to request for it. In their website, take for example the FIRS own. They should have posted the MOU there. You go, you click, you download it, you read. Then if you have further questions, you ask them, and they will give you those information on reasonable terms. So that's what the law requires. And so if we keep complaining that our leadership is irresponsive, or our leaderships, our different levels of government are not responding, not governing well, and we're not challenging them in the most civil and legal means, which is to ask questions, to say, why this happened? Who approved this? How did it get to this? First, are you the one who authorized this? Second, is this ASTA and this DCI group working for you, Mr. NSA? Yes, they're working for us. How did the money? Yes, the money was approved by the president, and it went to the central bank. So we know that this is not just what American government is telling us, but we got this information from Americans' mandatory disclosure. So the country that's a beneficiary of your money is the one who has the institutional, discipline and processes to let citizens know what their government is doing. That's really a contrast, and no wonder International Democracy Report lists Nigeria as electoral autocracy, not a democracy. Because if you are a democracy, then you citizens will be the first to know. It's not the American disclosure rules that Nigerians will pry into and say, oh, I saw listed Nigerian government, is a client to DCI group. No, it should have been somebody who goes to the NSA website or the Ministry of Finance website or any other government of Nigerian website, and will see that Nigeria had contracted a group, and then we'll start to monitor deliverables. We'll now start knowing who are the principal actors in that group, and then when we see them resurface in other aspects of domestic life, we can connect and say, maybe there's something that's against national security here. Maybe there's somebody. You see, we should never presume that our leaders mean well. Democracy is built on skepticism, that they probably will serve personal interests. And that's why I said you can't rule out money laundering at a scale here. You can't rule out anything. It's only when the government provides the information, you now go through it, and then it's okay. This is all in good faith. Maybe if I was president, I would have done this. It has no value, but it's legal, it's proper, it went through due process. We can argue whether the president exercised good judgment, but the bona fides are all true. That's really what it's all about. And that's how democracy works.
So, Dr. Amadi, if this contract is to have like real value, and of course we get a response as you've sent a letter to them, what measurable outcomes should Nigerians expect? And how do you think we're going to define success, from the outcome of this contract?
That's a big question to ask, and also nobody can answer clearly. Now, the problem with lobby work is that the success would result if, for example, there's a clarity as to risk. Now, Trump's designation of Nigeria as country of concern has one result you can expect. So if at the next review they take Nigeria off, that is an outcome. But that outcome, is it because Nigeria has done some policy revision? Is it because Trump's foreign policy was driven by a constituency, which is usually the point in American politics, and that constituency loses power? So you can't correlate. Causality is different. It's difficult. You cannot say A cause B. So once you give that contract, it presupposes that you have mapped out likely risk, and then you trust the expertise and the lobbying network. I mean, this guy, somebody, Roger Stone, who is a influential Republican somehow, is part of it. So there are some guys there who are part of Trump's, geopolitical, landscape. So you are trusting them, their network. There's really no work here that's like objective, legal, or professional work where there are policy. It's simply have tea, have dinner with one congressperson, try and meet Suzulis, the chief of staff, and say, this government is trying. Maybe if it works, you would know whether it's the effort, or whether the effort of ambassadors, or whether the effort of the Nigerian government revising, allowing more later attack in Nigeria with the American corporation, or whether it's the change from Minister of Defense from X to Y. Policy changes can be the real driver of result. But again, the guys smite the bank. That's the vagueness around lobbying contracts, because the outcomes you want, you can't show a causality that action taken A, B, C led to outcome Z. because there are many multi-causalization, multiple dynamics going on at the same time that what led to what is difficult to establish. But at the end of the day,
now, Dr. Amadi, thank you very much. We're almost running out of time. I want to ask Tohwo one last question before we go. Tohwo, so we've heard Dr. Amadi. Dr. Amadi says information is normally the thing that's in between us and our government. If we don't ask, we'll never get to know, we'll never hold accountable. So now that we know, how do we, the media, the citizens, civil society, how are we going to hold accountable when it comes to hold the government accountable when it comes to this contract? What do we do?
Okay, I think Dr. Amadi has pointed out something, the request for the information, the details of the contract. And you should also know that the office, you should also know that the people we have in power are a bit smart by half, because why they didn't use the office of, why they didn't use the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they want to classify that as issue of security. And in the world, in the world today, when it comes to issue of security, there are little or no details when you request, because they'll say for the purpose of national interest.
Classified.
But for this particular issue, I believe one thing we can do, we've gotten so many information from the disclosure made in US. The other thing again, Nigerian government cannot in any way refer to this as a classified information. Well, he has made a request which the journalists or the media house should have done, or pressure group should have done. The next thing is for we to go to court. But the other issue we are going to have again is the judiciary. How vast and what is the view of the judiciary in interpreting the provision of the Freedom of Information Act? That will be another subject of indication. So if the process of the Freedom of Information Act 2015 has been put in place, the hope of the common man or the media would be what would be the fate of the judiciary. You'll be surprised that when they go to court, they'll say, well, is an issue of national security, it cannot be disclosed. Well, that lies on the judiciary. But I believe that if all this information can be gathered, we'll be able to know the reason and the purpose for it. And let me make it clear, the issue of lobby cannot be measured as to the outcome. It cannot be measured because lobby can be a contents of, okay, I've said this and let's wait for the response. And sometimes the response may not match what the needed outcome, because lobby does not come with consideration. It does not come with consideration. It comes from a will of gesture towards a sympathetic view of a situation at hand. So empathy comes in there, and empathy can be built naturally, even without interjection from a third party, based on scenarios, based on circumstances, and based on information that may be gathered by the person in which we needed that decision from. So it's the Freedom of Information Act now that is the focal point, which we all need to rally about. And we're still waiting for the Office of the National Security Advisor to disclose to us why his office was used. And our own National House of Assembly, we're still waiting for them if they will debate or they will look into this particular matter. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Tohwo and Dr. Sam, for such an insight. And I believe that, of course, our viewers and Nigerians can also see that they can ask questions. I don't think a lot of people remember that they can actually question what they use our money for. So we appreciate both of you joining us and having this conversation with us. Thank you so much.